Tonight on ABC News Live, Prime Secretary Pete Hegseth under fire. Lawmakers on both sides warn the defense secretary may have committed war crimes following reports he ordered a follow-up strike on a suspected drug boat off of Venezuela. President Trump claims he was unaware of the strike amid scrutiny of the president's pardon of the former president of Honduras, convicted drug trafficker Juan Orlando Hernandez. Martha Raddatz and Matt Rivers have the details. 75 million Americans are under winter weather alerts thanks to a cross-country storm spreading snow and ice from the Midwest up to New England and heavy rains throughout the South. Our Ginger Z is standing by with the forecast.
I'm Gio Benitez at New York's LaGuardia Airport with a look at how the weather has impacted travel for millions of people trying to get home after that long holiday weekend.
A high-stakes pretrial hearing for murder suspect Luigi Mangione, nearly a year after the shooting that killed United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson. The 911 call that led to his arrest at a Pennsylvania McDonald's played in court for the first time ever. Black Friday, Small Business Saturday, Cyber Monday, and now Travel Tuesday. Big days for consumers and retailers alike with record sales this year. But are these deals too good to be true? We ask the experts which pitfalls to avoid before booking that trip tomorrow. And Jeremy Renner, everyman turned action hero. We talked to the two-time Academy Award nominee about his early days in Hollywood, his near-death experience in 2023, and how he's fought his way back.
38 broken bones, head trauma, chest trauma, collapsed lung. Doctors tell you you likely will never walk again. What do you credit to actually surpass those expectations?
I mean, here's a short answer. It's one word: love.
From ABC News World Headquarters in New York, this is Prime with Linsey Davis.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Linsey Davis. Thanks so much for streaming with us. We begin with war crime accusations following lethal strikes on an alleged drug boat off the coast of Venezuela. The White House is defending the right to kill narco traffickers after Secretary Pete Hegseth specifically ordered an attack on a suspected drug boat on September 2nd. According to the Washington Post, Hegseth ordered his team to kill everyone on board. Video from the attack shows the first to hit to the boat, but it's a second missile that is now raising concerns. The Pentagon faces accusations of war crimes for the follow-up strike that was reportedly targeting survivors clinging to the wreckage.
The president has a right to take them out if they are threatening the United States of America and if they are bringing illegal narcotics that are killing our citizens at a record rate, which is what they are doing.
Overnight, the president said he didn't know about that second strike, but now lawmakers on both sides of the aisle say international law prohibits killing a combatant who no longer poses a threat. The Senate and House Armed Service Committees say they will now investigate exactly what happened. Here's our chief global affairs anchor, Martha Raddatz.
Tonight, the Pentagon facing accusations of war crimes after a second strike on a boat carrying suspected drug traffickers off the coast of Venezuela. This video from September 2nd shows the first hit on the boat, but tonight questions are growing about a second missile that was fired. According to the Washington Post, it was targeting two survivors who were clinging to the wreckage. Tonight, members of both parties sounding the alarm, saying international law prohibits killing enemy combatants who no longer pose a threat. The Post reporting that at the outset of the operation, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth had ordered his team to kill everybody on board the boat. Hegseth has called the Washington Post report fabricated, saying the military acted in compliance with the law of armed conflict. Overnight, President Trump said he didn't know anything about the second strike, adding he wouldn't have wanted it.
We'll look into it, but no, I wouldn't have wanted that, not a second strike. The first strike was very lethal, it was fine, and if there were two people around, but Pete said that didn't happen.
But today, White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt confirmed there was more than one strike on the boat. She didn't confirm or deny that survivors were targeted. Leavitt saying the strikes were authorized by Hegseth and carried out by the mission's commander, Navy Admiral Frank Mitch Bradley.
On September 2nd, Secretary Hegseth authorized Admiral Bradley to conduct these kinetic strikes. Admiral Bradley worked well within his authority and the law, directing the engagement to ensure the boat was destroyed and the threat to the United States of America was eliminated.
ABC's Rachel Scott pressing asking how did those two survivors present a threat to the U.S.?
And what imminent threat would two survivors pose who were clinging presumably to the wreckage of that boat?
Admiral Bradley worked well within his authority and the law.
Tonight, Democratic and Republican lawmakers demanding answers.
You know, that is against the Geneva Conventions. That's against the laws of war, which we should always be abiding by. We're the United States of America. We have to hold our people to a higher standard. This is really serious.
Martha Raddatz joins us now. Martha, the administration has authorized a number of these attacks on drug boats, as you know. Could this additional scrutiny require them to change tactics?
While the White House defended the September strikes today, although not answering specific questions, by mid-October, when another suspected drug boat was hit, the survivors were rescued and returned to their home countries. So somebody made a change there. Lindsay?
All right, Martha Raddatz for us. Thanks so much. While the United States has been targeting boats allegedly trafficking drugs in the Caribbean and the Pacific, on Friday, President Trump surprised many by offering a pardon to a former president of Honduras who is currently serving a long sentence in an American prison for conspiring to traffic cocaine into the United States. And it happened just before Honduras went to the polls Sunday to elect a new president. The results in that election are still inconclusive. Here's Matt Rivers.
Two heads of state, one credibly accused and the other convicted of helping traffic prolific amounts of cocaine to the U.S. Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro is now staring at U.S. warships off his coast. But the other, former Honduran President Juan Orlando Hernández, currently in U.S. prison, set to get a presidential pardon from Donald Trump.
They basically said he was a drug dealer because he was the president of the country. And they said it was a Biden administration setup. And I looked at the facts and I agreed with them.
But the claim it was not a setup is not true, according to the Department of Justice. The story of Juan Orlando Hernández was born amidst a never-ending American demand for drugs. From his time as a congressman up through two presidential campaigns, U.S. prosecutors say Hernández fueled his rise with a simple criminal quid pro quo: power for protection. Drug money in the form of bribes put and kept Hernández in office, law enforcement alleged. His involvement in the drug trade was among the country's worst-kept secrets, especially after the 2018 U.S. drug trafficking conviction of his brother Tony. Once Hernández left office in 2022, he lost the typical deference given to heads of state, and U.S. prosecutors pounced. The indictment lays out the case clearly. The defendant abused his position as the president of Honduras to operate the country as a narco-state, becoming one of the largest transshipment points in the world for United States-bound cocaine. Hernández once said he was going to stuff the drugs right up the noses of the gringos, even taking a $1 million bribe from El Chapo Guzman, the famed once leader of the Sinaloa cartel. Prosecutors say Hernández was a leader in a massive conspiracy to ship unfathomable amounts of cocaine to the U.S., a cocaine superhighway of some 400 tons over nearly 20 years, street value well into the billions of dollars, not to mention arms trafficking as well. The evidence was overwhelming, and a jury convicted Hernández in 2024 after just 8 hours of deliberation. A 45-year prison sentence came soon after. And that's where it ended, until this Friday post on Truth Social. Trump saying he would pardon Hernández, who has been, according to many people that I greatly respect, treated very harshly and unfairly. The decision stunning. Trump defending it over the weekend.
What evidence did you share that he was set up and that he wasn't?
Well, you take a look. I mean, they could say that you take any country you want. If somebody sells drugs in that country, that doesn't mean you arrest the president and put him in jail for the rest of his life.
It's worth noting Hernández wasn't simply accused of allowing this to happen in his country. He was convicted of actually taking part in it. But the timing of the pardon wasn't coincidental. In that same Truth Social post, Trump endorsing a conservative politician, Tito Asfura, member of the same party as Hernández, in Sunday's presidential elections.
Not only, mind you, having the president of the United States announcing his support for one particular candidate, but the announcement of the pardon to Juan Orlando Hernández sent shockwaves in Honduras, political and social. You could see social networks filling up with people commenting. You could see how it was all people would be talking about in the news. And right now, I would hazard to say that it's almost as important as the elections themselves.
But perhaps the most stunning part of the pardon is that it comes as Trump is actively trying to boot Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro from power, a man Trump accuses of doing the exact same sort of thing that Hernandez was convicted for, running a narco state that sends drugs that kills Americans.
It's very hard to evaluate Mr. Trump's foreign policy. The idea of Juan Orlando Hernandez returning to Honduras will have a lot of repercussions in the country.
Our thanks to Matt. For more now, we're joined by ABC News contributor and national security and defense analyst Mick Mulroy. Mick, thanks for joining us. What factors will the House and Senate oversight committees consider as they review the September 2nd incident?
Well, certainly, Lindsay, I think they're going to look at exactly what the legal basis for these lethal strikes on these drug boats are, and then the exact rules of engagement that was used to strike this first one, and whether there was authorization and legal approval to take this secondary strike. If there was not, then there's going to be certainly a lot of questions. If there was, then there's going to be questions relating to the policy that put this in place. I don't know those facts. I think those facts should be determined by the relevant committees in the House and the Senate Armed Services Committee, the House Armed Services Committee, and the relevant intelligence committees. That's where this should be adjudicated, but certainly there are a lot of questions based on that report.
What are the specific rules of engagement in an armed conflict like this?
So essentially, this theory of this type of attack is that there's imminent threat to the United States. So by delivering these drugs to the United States, you're going to end up with dead Americans because of the lethalities, particularly with the fentanyl that's with these drugs. So that is what the legal basis is for these strikes. The question then becomes, when does that imminency end? If you've already struck the boat and you have a disabled boat, potentially wounded individuals in the water, how would one make the case that that's an imminent threat to the United States? If that's not the case, then there is not authorization to continue the strikes based on your own theory of the case. However, if there was a legal opinion that said you could essentially kill every individual on the boat, regardless of what status they were on transport, that's another question. It's really going to come down to the facts of the case. I think the U.S. military is very familiar with these types of strikes through the last 20 years of the global war on terrorism. They have a process, they have a legal check on the system, but the question is really going to be, what was the authority and whether that authority originally was legal.
Just today, White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt defended the operation as one of self-defense against an onslaught of illegal drugs coming into the United States. Do you think that argument will hold up?
Well, that's the basis of this entire campaign against these drug shipments. Normally, when it comes to this type of lethal military campaign, there is an authorization that's given by Congress, such as the authorization to use military force that was and still is in place throughout the entirety of the global war on terror. So the U.S. military derived its authority to conduct these type of attacks from the congressional authorization. That's not in existence right now. There is no congressional authorization to lethally target these drug boats. One could make the argument, and Congress could either accept it or not, but right now that hasn't happened. It's simply a designation by the State Department as this group is a foreign terrorist organization. But that authorization by the State Department is for the putting in sanctions in place. It's for travel restrictions. It's not for lethal authority. That usually comes from Congress. If it's not an imminent threat to the United States, the commander-in-chief, the president, can't authorize this.
Running out of time, but before we go, I want to ask, as Matt Rivers reported, President Trump has also just pardoned the former president of Honduras, Juan Orlando Hernandez, who was serving a 45-year sentence for helping to move cocaine into the U.S. Does this undercut the administration's anti-drug efforts?
Well, Lindsay, it certainly is inconsistent to pardon one individual who is the leader of a country that facilitated drugs into the United States and was convicted, at the same time designated the other, Maduro of Venezuela, as the head of a foreign terrorist organization that justifies legal strikes on the individuals that fall, apparently, under Maduro. So it is inconsistent, and it actually does, in many ways, hamper the argument about the ability to use lethal strikes against a organization like this narco terrorist group. So I think it's not only inconsistent, it might hurt the very argument that they're using to take these lethal strikes.
Mick Mulroy for us. Thanks so much, Mick. Next tonight to that cross-country storm across the heartland, the Midwest, and now pushing into the Northeast. Tonight, more than 75 million Americans are under winter alerts. Snow, ice, and freezing rain moving from Kansas to New York to Maine. Ginger Z has the forecast in a moment, but first, Gio Benitez leads us off with the images coming in.
Tonight, a powerful new cross-country storm slamming tens of millions from the Midwest to the Northeast with heavy snow and ice, causing widespread travel disruptions. At least 22 states under alert.
It'll be a little dicey out there, but we'll be treating the roads throughout the storm.
In Oklahoma, freezing rain and ice causing commuter chaos this morning. More than 300 crashes reported, at least 2 people killed.
There were 3 wrecks that I saw, one with a car upside down, and it was a nightmare.
In Des Moines, Iowa over the weekend, this Delta flight from Detroit sliding off the end of the runway moments after landing. Fortunately, no injuries were reported. Chicago getting more snow tonight after the snowiest November day on record, 8.4 inches falling on Saturday. Of the nearly 3,500 flights canceled nationwide since Saturday, more than 1,000 were at Chicago's airports.
Our flight was supposed to leave at 2:20 and it just kept getting delayed. We knew on Friday, I was like, oh, this might be pretty bad, but I didn't know it was going to be that bad.
Some bad scenes out there. Gio Benitez joins us now. Gio, any advice for travelers heading to the airport over the next 24 hours?
So, Lindsay, you know that I'm always saying get to the airport early, but I want you to take that to another level. I want you to get on the earliest flight possible. And the reason is that these planes are already there overnight. You don't want to have to wait for these planes to get there later on in the day. And as that storm develops and starts moving through, it's going to be tougher for planes to get to where they need to go. And that's true all across the country, no matter where this storm is actually hitting. So pay close attention to that. Have that airline app ready to go on your phone so you can make that change as quickly as possible, Lindsay.
Good advice for us all. Gio Benitez for us. Thanks so much. Ginger Z is tracking it all for us. Ginger, time the storm out for us.
Yes, Lindsay, you'll see all of the alerts on the map, and those are the folks that need to be on the lookout because tonight from St. Louis through Indianapolis, Cincinnati, then Pittsburgh and Harrisburg, and then you see that pink, that's a winter storm warning from Hunter, New York up to Bangor, Maine. We all have to be on the lookout for snow or a mix of rain, snow, and even some places ice. So let's time that out as you asked for. We're going to start with what we're seeing now, Chicago down through Indianapolis. The snow is starting. The heavier rain and some thunderstorms will be moving through from the south end. It's when those two merge, it's the really cold air meeting that moisture, and that's when you're going to see the heaviest snow. So Pittsburgh tomorrow morning is going to be really tough to get around. Then you go over to, say, Scranton, where it will be mostly snow. But if you're in New York City, you could see maybe a little mix, but mostly all rain. Same thing for Boston. Heavy rain at times as we go through the afternoon and evening, but you notice how that blue is staying just west of I-95. That means that interior New England, from, say, the Highlands of Maine back down to the Poconos, that's where that 6 to 12 inches could fall tomorrow through tomorrow night. Lindsay.
And Ginger, Atlantic hurricane season is now officially over and the numbers are in. Tell us the surprising stats about landfalls.
Yes, and so, for the first time in a decade, we did not have a landfalling hurricane in the United States. So it was 2015 when we did that last. At the same time, we had 3 Cat 5 hurricanes in the Atlantic. We haven't had a year like that in 20 years since that epic season of 2005. So one of the main drivers for why we did not have landfalls, the placement of the Bermuda High that kind of steers the storms, but also this persistent trough that kind of pushed them off the coast. A bunch of things happened in August and September, like dry air, Saharan dust. I could go on forever, but basically we got really lucky, and we won't forget Hurricane Melissa and Jamaica and all the parts of the Caribbean that were hit as well.
You are right. Okay, Lindsay? Ginger, thank you. Luigi Mangione, the man accused of killing United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson, was back in court today. Attorneys for Mangione are seeking to have critical evidence tossed from his murder trial. Our Aaron Katursky has the latest.
Tonight, nearly a year after the assassination-style killing of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson on a New York City street, accused murderer Luigi Mangione back in court trying to get key evidence thrown out. The camera catching Mangione in a gray suit with a smile on his face, but later showing no reaction while watching video of the 50-year-old father crumpling to his death on the sidewalk. The Ivy League grad also saw footage of his arrest at a Pennsylvania McDonald's where the manager called 911 saying customers recognized the bushy eyebrows and thought he looked like the CEO shooter in New York. But defense attorneys say police had no warrant to seize and search Mangione's backpack, arguing the contents cannot now be used against him, including a red notebook in which prosecutors say Mangione revealed a plan and a motive, writing, "I finally feel confident about what I will do. The target is insurance. It checks every box." Police say the backpack also contained the murder weapon, a 3D printed gun and silencer. Today, prosecutors offered a supporting witness, a Pennsylvania correction officer who testified Mangione talked to him about having a pistol and it was 3D printed.
Aaron Katersky joins us now. And Aaron, you've been in the courtroom all day. A different Pennsylvania corrections officer testified today detailing deep conversations that he had with Mangione. What stood out to you?
Yeah, you heard the one talk about Mangione mentioning carrying a 3D printed pistol. Another correction officer, Linsey, said the two had a conversation about health care. It was casual. The two talked about the differences between privatized health care and nationalized health care. And the guards were around him all the time while he was incarcerated in Pennsylvania, Linsey, after his arrest there, because this one correction officer testified the prison was afraid of another Epstein-style situation, referring to the jailhouse suicide here in New York of Jeffrey Epstein.
The hearing is set to resume tomorrow morning. What can we expect?
Yeah, this hearing could go on for days, Linsey. The defense is, in addition to the contents of the backpack, also trying to omit certain statements Mangione made to police during his arrest, arguing he was not properly read his rights. Linsey?
Aaron Katersky for us. Thanks so much, Aaron. With more on this, let's bring in ABC News legal contributor Shauna Lloyd. Shauna, thanks for joining us. In your opinion, does the defense team's argument essentially that he was not properly given his Miranda rights, does that argument have legs?
That argument has legs, Linsey, and I'll tell you why. It's one of our most protected constitutional rights is to have our Miranda rights read to us when we're being arrested. What they're alleging on the defense side is that he was not properly Mirandized, therefore he didn't know that he had the right to remain silent, and he was answering questions that the police officers were, inquiring of him and giving information he otherwise wouldn't have given. If the judge finds this to be true, those statements could potentially be thrown out. So this is a very significant argument that can change the course of the case.
Today, prosecutors played the 911 call that led to Mangione's arrest, plus a video of the shooting. What's the purpose of showing this evidence?
So looking at that evidence is real-time video of what was happening. So although we don't have audio, what they're hoping to show is that this was something that he gave voluntarily. It was not forced upon him. He was not coerced in any way, and that these statements should be admitted. So looking at that, the judge has all of the basis by which to make a decision about whether or not this evidence should be entered at trial.
If the defense team succeeds in limiting key evidence here, what does that mean for the prosecution's case?
Well, for the prosecution's case, that's going to be a very severe blow to their case because a lot of the evidence was seized at that time. Now, we have to remember, Linsey, that the judge can make different decisions on different things. He could rule differently on the statements versus the items that were in the bag based on the circumstances by which they got them. So what we're going to see is the judge really look through the information. He's also going to make a determination as to whether or not this information would have been discovered further down during discovery, because that also impacts his decision as well. Once he's looked at all the circumstances in their totality, he will issue a ruling and will know what evidence would be admitted at trial.
All right, switching gears now. A jury today found social media commentator and blogger Milagro Grams liable for defaming rapper Megan Thee Stallion, but not guilty. What exactly does that mean? Liable, but not guilty?
They find her liable because what they're saying is that there's enough there to say that she should be held accountable for her actions of putting the video out there, of giving it to the fans. But what they're saying is that they didn't find her as having that malicious intent. And so there's a little bit of a split there. And that's why we see that decision and then the actual jury form that reflected what they found her actually guilty of, which was the AI and promoting that video.
Shauna Lloyd, always appreciate your insight and time. Thank you. Now to a surprising moment at the White House briefing today. Facing growing questions about President Trump's health, the White House released results of his recent MRI test, even as the president admitted he didn't know what the test was for. Here's Rachel Scott.
Tonight, the White House releasing the results of the MRI President Trump underwent in early October during a checkup at Walter Reed Hospital. The White House had not initially disclosed the tests. The president later acknowledged it happened.
We had an MRI, and in the machine, the whole thing, and it was perfect.
But the details were sketchy.
I have no idea what they analyzed, but whatever they analyzed it well, and they said that I had as good a result as they've ever seen.
Tonight, the White House physician says the MRI covered President Trump's heart and abdominal area and declared it perfectly normal, saying all major organs appear very healthy and are functioning within normal limits with no acute or chronic concerns.
Rachel Scott joins us now from the White House. Rachel, what has the White House said about the timing of the president's imaging?
Yeah, well, and Lindsay, the White House faced a lot of questions about the timing of that MRI because it came just months after the president got his annual physical in April and during what they described as sort of a routine scheduled checkup over at Walter Reed Medical Center. Well, the White House is now saying that this was a preventative measure and standard for what they described as an executive physical for someone of the age of the president, who is 79 years old, Lindsay.
Rachel Scott for us. Thanks so much, Rachel. And we're learning more tonight about the deadly ambush of 2 National Guard members just blocks away from the White House. The suspect is from Afghanistan and reportedly worked with the CIA during the war there. Authorities say he was unable to find work in the U.S. and possibly suffered a mental health crisis. Here's Pierre Thomas.
Tonight, one of the National Guard members attacked in Washington, D.C., showing encouraging signs, giving a thumbs up to a nurse when that nurse asked if he could hear.
We were told that he also wiggled his toes.
24-year-old Andrew Wolf, one of the 2 National Guard members ambushed last week, is still in an area hospital in serious condition. This is a solemn memorial grows at the scene of the shooting for Sarah Beckstrom, who died on Thanksgiving Day of her wounds. Tonight, the man suspected of ambushing them, 29-year-old Ramanullah Lakanawal of Afghanistan, remains hospitalized and under heavy guard as authorities race to determine a motive. A national and international terrorism investigation intensifying as the FBI conducts interviews and pours through documents and communications. Sources telling ABC News the suspect worked with the CIA during the war in Afghanistan and came to the U.S. in 2021 under the Biden administration. He was granted asylum under the Trump administration this past April, but sources tell ABC News he was unemployed and has recently been impacted by the death of one of his Afghan commanders, growing isolated and distant from family and friends. The suspect now faces first-degree murder, but Lindsay, authorities have been unable to have his first court appearance because he remains hospitalized under that heavy armed guard.
Pierre Thomas for us. Thank you. We're now hours away from a crucial meeting between U.S. envoy Steve Witkoff and Vladimir Putin in Moscow. On the table is the U.S. peace plan. Our chief foreign correspondent Ian Pannell reports from Kyiv tonight with what Russia is already signaling. Ian?
Yeah, Lindsay, a moment of truth for President Trump's peace efforts. His lead negotiator, Steve Witkoff, heading to Moscow to try and see if Vladimir Putin's willing to make not just demands, but concessions and finally accept the US plan to end his war in Ukraine. This follows high-level talks between the US and Ukraine over the weekend. But today, Russia continuing to attack, seen in video circulating online, and Russian state media even showing Vladimir Putin supposedly meeting with senior officers at a command post. Lindsay, a source familiar with the discussions telling ABC News the Russians are refusing to agree to a ceasefire unless Ukraine cedes territory. It doesn't bode well for a breakthrough in this high-stakes meeting. Lindsay?
Ian, thank you. Recovery efforts are underway after devastating floods left more than 1,000 dead in Asia. The death toll is likely to rise in Sri Lanka, Indonesia, and Thailand after monsoon rains and a cyclone last week produced landslides and floods across the region. Indonesia's president told survivors that help was arriving today and pledged to rebuild infrastructure while visiting areas impacted. The death toll is expected to rise following search efforts. Pope Leo is continuing his first international trip in Lebanon. The stop comes just a week after Israel attacked Beirut. The Pope delivered a message of peace and hope to a crowd of thousands. He offered to be a mediating voice for Israel and the Palestinians. The Pope said the two-state solution is the only solution to their conflict. The TSA announced a $45 fee for travelers with no real ID starting February 1st of 2026. The fee is part of the agency's next phase of the Real ID implementation process. It will require individuals to verify their identity through a a biometric or biographic system if they don't have proper identification, such as a passport or real ID. Coming up, restricting public prayer and extending a ban on wearing religious symbols, the controversial move a Canadian province is making in the name of religious neutrality. Plus, the health risks cell phone use could have on children under the age of 12. A new study warns of depression, obesity, and more. But first, Travel Tuesday temptation. Will the deals be that good tomorrow? We're going to the experts about whether or not tomorrow morning you should drop money on your next trip. Welcome back, everyone. We are at the tail end of one of the biggest shopping weeks of the year, Cyber Week. That term refers to a 5-day period that includes Thanksgiving, Black Friday, and Cyber Monday, which of course is today. And while Black Friday especially might bring memories of camping outside of popular stores in the early morning hours to get that big purchase, recent trends indicate more people are opting to make their purchases online. Let's take a look at Cyber Week sales by the numbers. Customers were expected to spend a record $14.2 billion during Cyber Monday today, according to Adobe Analytics. That would be almost $900 million more than Cyber Monday last year. Adobe also said 57% of online Cyber Monday purchases were expected to come from electronics, apparel, and furniture. And the discounts on electronics were expected to peak at 30% off the listed price. But Cyber Monday isn't only major online shopping day anymore. Adobe says consumers spend a record $11.8 billion online on Black Friday and a record $6.4 billion in online sales on Thanksgiving. Meanwhile, mobile shopping appeared to be the most popular way of making these purchases, which is many at 61.6% of sales on Thanksgiving coming from mobile devices as opposed to a desktop. And Adobe predicted a similar pattern for Cyber Monday purchases. But there's still another opportunity to take advantage of major sales tomorrow. Travel Tuesday. Throughout the day, airlines, hotels, cruises, travel booking sites, and more is expected to offer major deals for those looking to book their next getaways. And for more on what to expect on Travel Tuesday, we are joined by Clint Henderson, managing editor for The Points Guy. Thanks so much for being with us, Clint. First of all, I have to say, if I were behind the Giving Tuesday effort, I'd be so upset that somebody nabbed it. How did Travel Tuesday come about?
So it's really interesting. It started out as a marketing gimmick. Hopper is an online travel company, and they sort of invented this term, Travel Deal Tuesday. And when it first started, it really was sort of a gimmick, but it has turned into a powerhouse for travel deals. So really good deals out there this year. All
right, so what are some of the best deals you've seen so far?
Okay, so Alaska Airlines, 30% off fares. Hawaiian Airlines, $99 from Hawaii and to Hawaii from the United States, from the continental United States, I should say. $99, that's a great deal. Delta has sales on almost every airport they fly out of. We're talking $200 New York to Miami. We're talking $300 East Coast to West Coast. American Airlines, under $100 one-way fares all over the country. American Airlines, $57,500 from Philadelphia to Europe in business class using their miles. A lot of miles deals out there too. So incredible deals out there. Almost all the hotels have 25 to 30% off. If you are looking to book spring break travel, try for Tuesday. It's going to be a really good day to lock in cheaper fares, cheaper hotel rooms than you would normally get. In fact, it's one of the best all-around savings days for travel all year long.
Flavio's in here with me. You heard those deals, New York to Miami. Get on the computer tomorrow. All right, so Clint, what are some tips that would-be travelers can use to really get the most out of tomorrow's deals?
So have a game plan. Know what flights you want to book. Sort of like map out your year in advance. I locked in some fares to go home to Montana to see my dad on the ranch. And, you know, I had an idea of what trips I wanted to take. And then you can look and see if they're on sale with your individual airline. At The Points Guy, I'm updating daily, have been since Black Friday, all a roundup of all the cheap airfare sales. And then we also have a great roundup of all the hotel deals. So have a game plan. You know, lock in with your airline. If you don't have time to read or research a lot, just figure out those few flights that you want to take that you can maybe get a discount on.
And quickly, we know booking travel can sometimes involve various restrictions, hitting costs and fluctuations. How can people make sure what they think is a good deal is actually a good deal?
So you're gonna notice right away. And if you want to compare prices, Google Flights, you can check Google Flights for average hotel and flight prices, and that'll give you a good idea of whether you're getting a good deal or not. Generally, if you're booking tomorrow, you're gonna probably get a better deal than you normally would.
All right, good to know. Clint Henderson, always appreciate your advice. Thank you so much. Coming up, we reveal Oxford's word of the year, and beware, it just might make you mad. Plus, tonight on All Access, we sit down with actor Jeremy Renner for an in-depth and emotional conversation from why he got into acting to what kept him going after the accident that nearly cost him his life. Welcome back, everyone. He's the everyman turned action hero. Jeremy Renner, the two-time Academy Award nominee, gained early acclaim for his role as Jeffrey Dahmer in the 2002 hit Dahmer, but it wasn't until his 2009 breakout role in The Hurt Locker that he would start taking Hollywood by storm. We sat down with Jeremy Renner in late October to discuss his love for music, his early days in Hollywood, and his near-death experience in 2023. Here's a sneak peek of our all-access conversation.
Jeremy, thank you so much for making the time to have the conversation. Of course, you wear a lot of hats: father, philanthropist, actor, and musician.
Sure.
In 2023, when you had that near-death experience, you wrote a really emotional song dedicated to your daughter, Ava.
Yeah. It was inspired by the first words I said to my daughter when I saw her after the incident. When I got home from the ICU, they had to hide all the information that was happening to me in the beginning, if I was going to come out of the coma or not, all these kind of things, you know, pretty harrowing for my family to kind of juggle that. So when I got home, and I got home pretty quickly, and after like 12, 13 days, made it to back home, and I saw my daughter. I want to say I've forgotten that I was a dad, but there was so many other things going on, high as a kite, on all these painkillers and all these things. And I remember getting home, my daughter's my number one, and wanting to see her. And the door opened, and I remember my sister, Kim, was like, you know, guess who's here? I got a surprise for you. I'm like, what's that? This is my daughter. She came in, and then I really, the whole world came kind of crumbling down. It kind of, you know, I think I had to remember the seriousness of what I was going through at the time. I just asked her to wait for me. I would think were the first words to kind of just be patient, essentially, is what I was saying. Is if I'll be the dad that you knew if you just wait. You know, I'll be able to hold you and all these things. I couldn't. I was completely, you know, kind of useless at the point. But what I did do is try to encourage her, like, what you can do is I need you to sort of help me. And you have to kind of be the parent. You have to be my arms, my legs, and maybe you can go get me some water or some things, you know? And so to kind of give her direction to kind of deal with the emotions of seeing her dad pretty busted up. So in writing the song, it was really cathartic for me to go through with and I wrote it with some friends of mine too. So it was a pretty special thing for me to do with my friends and and it's nice to kind of write things for my daughter. It's like the third or fourth song I've written for her. Anything also to get your mind off your body and your health, and right, I was always looking for a distraction or a focus, more importantly than a distraction, like to focus on something else that was hopeful.
So Ava, now 12 years old, you've said that that's the most important role of your life, being a father.
Yeah, for sure.
How has that changed your priorities?
When Ava came, everything changed, and it seemed like probably just a second of time, but time stopped when a child comes out and they grab your finger, like a Palmer's reflex is what it's called, and it's like they grab it like as strong as an adult, right? The thought came to me, it's like, oh, as she's taking her first breath, grabbing my finger, like if I do right by her, we'll be in the same position when I take my last breath. So then it was sort of like, you know, I don't know if I believed in God all of a sudden in that moment, or if I believed in a perspective that was just poured into me, because I certainly didn't ever expect that perspective. But it's like, oh, I get it now. And I just sort of kind of was looking up, oh, I get it. I can get out of my way now and just go, this is my number one priority.
What does she think about you as an actor? I mean, is Dad cool? I know.
No, I don't think so. She's always been too young, and I don't think anything I did was pretty age appropriate for her, you know, at the time. I think she thinks I'm cool because the work I do with foster kids, because she works with me side by side with them a lot. She's really wonderful with the kids. I think maybe that, or maybe music. Music is something much more something she thinks cool, because I've written a bunch of songs about her. The studio's in the house, so I get her playing a bunch of different instruments since she was a little kid. Maybe that, I think, is probably it's something that connects us, unites us together, that a young girl and an old man can sort of come together on and both enjoy. And music is a big thing in that, I think.
You can stream the full all-access episode with Jeremy Renner on Hulu and Disney+. Coming up, the California resident with quite the discovery, a bear underneath their home. And the college football shock, legendary coach Lane Kiffin jumping ship to LSU with his now former team set to play in the college playoff. ESPN's Herm Edwards breaks it all down with us. A man in Southern California discovers an uninvited house guest. A new study finds health impacts for children who get a smartphone before the age of 12, and why the word of the year just might make you angry. These stories and more in tonight's rundown. A California homeowner made a shocking discovery right beneath his feet.
This is what he ripped up.
A massive bear had taken up residence in a crawl space underneath his home. The owner said he thought something was wrong when he noticed bricks were torn out near the crawl space, so he installed outdoor cameras. He alerted local officials, who warned him to stay inside for his own safety. He's contacted California Fish and Wildlife and is waiting to hear back so that this unwanted guest can move along. Starbucks has settled a nearly $40 million lawsuit brought by the New York City Department of Consumer and Worker Protection. The lawsuit alleged that Starbucks repeatedly violated the city's Fair Workweek law at more than 300 different locations by suddenly cutting workers' hours and changing their schedules without notice. The workers were also denied chances to pick up additional shifts. Starbucks said the violations are about compliance and not about withholding wages or failing to pay partners. The Canadian province of Quebec is set to restrict public prayer and extend a ban on wearing religious symbols as part of their goal of ensuring religious neutrality. The proposed restrictions would expand a controversial 2019 law that prohibits some public officials from wearing kippahs, turbans, or hijabs. It would also prohibit public institutions from offering food based on religious traditions, such as halal or kosher meals. Religious symbols would also be banned from subsidized daycares, and group prayer in public spaces would require prior approval from local municipalities. Children who owned a smartphone before the age of 12 were more likely to suffer from depression, obesity, and lack of sleep, according to a new pediatric study. Each year earlier the child received a smartphone raised the odds of these problems by about 10%, compared with kids who received one later or not at all. The researchers recommended thoughtful discussion between parents, children, and their pediatricians to determine whether children are ready for a phone. Oxford University Press has revealed its word of the year, and it's sure to push your buttons. Rage bait was selected as the word of the year, beating out other contenders like aura farming and biohack. Rage baiting refers to online content that is deliberately designed to elicit anger or outrage by being frustrating, provocative, or offensive while driving traffic to a particular social media account. First Lady Melania Trump has unveiled this year's White House Christmas decorations, which follow a red, white, and blue theme. The First Lady announced this year's theme, "Home is where the heart is," and wrote on social media that we can create a home filled with endless possibilities. The decorations were installed amid an ongoing renovation of the President and First Lady's residence, along with the demolition of the former White House East Wing to make room for a new ballroom. For our weekly look into the sports world, it's time for Hanging with Herm with Coach Herm Edwards. Coach, thank you so much for being here, and congratulations. I think I remember you were going to be in Texas. Your Texas Longhorns actually were able to pull off a victory over A&M. There you go. So top takeaways from a very eventful weekend of Thanksgiving football.
Well, I think Thanksgiving football, beside the football, it's to bring families together. Yeah. And I think that's the greatest thing about how we spend a tradition together, family and friends. Watch a lot of football games. Sometimes you leave a little bit disappointed because your team might have lost, and sometimes you leave very excited about your team winning. So it was a great Thanksgiving weekend for me and our family, for sure.
Now that the calendar has turned to December, what do you think has been the biggest surprise for you so far this season?
I would say the Chicago Bears and the way Caleb Williams and this team has turned it around. Coaching matters, and now you look at the Chicago Bears. No one would have imagined at this point in time the Chicago Bears were in first place. And they're in the same division with the Green Bay Packers, the Detroit Lions, and the Minnesota Vikings. And they are playing outstanding football. Last year, this team was scoring about 16 points a game. They're at 25 points a game right now. Quarterback is playing very good. Their defense is one of the best defenses in the National Football League, taking the ball away. I think they've got like 26 takeaways. So this team, every week we think, they're not very good, they just keep winning.
They might be reprising their, remember that Super Bowl shuffle? I feel like I was in elementary school or something back then. But our biggest disappointment so far?
Oh, biggest disappointment. Let me look at my list. Disappointments. I'm going to look down the line. You know what? I would say right now, I thought the Giants would be better. Right? I thought they would be I thought they would be better than 2-10. Now they got a young quarterback. I understand that. This is kind of a big game for the Giants tonight. You know, the New England Patriots are beat up a little bit with their offensive line, and the Giants have one of the better defensive lines. Both these teams have two young quarterbacks. The Giants have found their quarterback of the future. Obviously, the Patriots have found their quarterback as well. But this is kind of one of those games where if you're the Patriots, you need to get out fast on these Giants. If you let them hang around, it could be a long night.
Let's take a look at college football now. Have to get your take on the Lane Kiffin situation. He announces he's going to LSU for a 7-year, $91 million contract. I guess, Carrie, do the math, that's about $13 million a year. He could have stayed at Ole Miss, made $10 million a year, and then steered an 11-1 Ole Miss team into a possible college football playoff. How does this sit with all you? How does this all sit with you?
Well, I'll tell you the truth. I've known Lane Kiffin since he was 11 years old. Monty Kiffin worked with us in Tampa Bay when he was a little guy running around. So I look at it this way. This is the state of college football. Not only do coaches leave, players leave as well. They pay college athletes. When Lane Kiffin was fired on the tarmac from USC, nobody said a word. He got off the airplane after losing a football game. They actually fired him on the tarmac, right? He's come a long way. I think this is a bigger challenge for him. That's what he feels like. And, you know, and rightly so. If he wants to go, he wants to go. Because the one thing we know about coaching, eventually, and it doesn't matter who you are, they fire you. and nobody worries about it. No one says a word. But when you want to leave, everybody gets mad at you.
That's right. Just have to avoid the tarmac every once in a while, I guess, as you hang in there. All right, Herm Edwards, we thank you so much for your time and insight, as always. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
And that is our show for this hour. I'm Linsey Davis. Be sure to stay tuned to ABC News Live for more context and analysis of the day's top stories. Thanks so much for streaming with us.